Hi again, everyone. This time I'm giving you a sneak peek from the very beginning of the Infidel, from chapter 1. And this chapter has not changed all that much from the initial book I started to write when I was 16 years old, which was many, many decades ago, let me tell you. So sit back, close your eyes, and enjoy the Infidel, chapter 1, Covenant. The smell of burnt milk hung heavily in the air as his eyes opened reluctantly to the familiar sight of thatch above his head. The youth toyed with the idea of rising, beginning what would be yet another day of work, another day of cow's dung, chickens to feed, bales of hay and blisters. His scalp itched, inviting relief. Obligingly, calloused fingers ran a path through unevenly cropped hair until they found the irritation. He scratched self-indulgently, thinking such moments of relief produced the kind of enjoyment that must certainly be considered perverse. He wondered if his teachers at the monastery abstained from such simple pleasures, or whether in the darker hours, when only he could see them, they scratched. His heavily lidded eyes closed in defiance of the ever-increasing need to urinate. The knowledge that a few moments of sleep could provide hours of dreams always prompted him to resist relieving his bladder. He could hear muffled voices outside, horses, still more reason to prolong sleep. His thoughts drifted. The wind was in his face, spraying sand into every pore of his sun-withered skin. A familiar smell, the salt air of the Aegean, filled his nostrils. The rocking motion of the ship tested his balance as it moved from the bay out into open water. He was older, stronger, harder, and he was going home. I should be happy, he thought, but I am not. Can there ever be a new beginning? The fog closed in, enveloping, seducing, obscuring his vision. The moment passed and his nostrils filled anew with the smell of burnt milk. There was a muted scream and the clanging of metal. The sharp disparity between dream and reality told him in an instant that he had fallen asleep again. He shook his head, clearing the fog. The vestiges of some kind of nightmare, sad and confusing, lurked the darkest corners of his brain, like the after-effects of too much mead. The burnt milk odour persisted, stronger now, penetrating every corner of the room. He eyed it curiously, its familiar shape intensifying as the blur that clouded his eyes gave way. The boy's gaze traced the outline of the doorway, familiar and reassuring. Then he honed his attention on the perfect halo that enveloped the slightly ajar door. It is late, he thought. I have overslept. He did not rise immediately, resisting one last time the inevitability of leaving his warm, comfortable bed straw. His mind returned to the door and the golden light that poked unashamedly through every crack in its wood. The light continued its path obstinately and formed little pools on the semi-laden table, shining brilliantly when it struck the wood grains in the bowls. There were 4 bowls, turned some years past by his brother, and lain with unerring predictability on the table each morning by Pina, his sister. As he gazed, transfixed by the harmony of the scene, he slowly became aware of the sound of hooves in the distance, and more prominently of milk hissing as it bubbled over the pot in the hearth and was consumed by flame. Summoning all his willpower, he clambered out of the loft and down a gnarled, rope-fastened ladder. With an unconscious movement, he reached for the handle of the pot and removed it from the hearth. It scorched the palm of his hand slightly, ridding him of the last remnants of sleep. Reaching for his shirt, which had dried overnight on a stool in front of the fire, he pulled it over his tall, adolescent frame. His boots were brown and well worn. They'd belonged to his brother Piero, and now they belonged to him. Stuffing flocking into the toes of his shoes made them fit better and protected his toes from the mud and slosh that of custom found their way into his boots. It was a daily ritual, like much of his life. He was a strapping youth on the threshold of manhood. Like his brother, he was a farmer's son, but unlike Piero, he would not follow in his father's footsteps. The difference between them was not in the order of their birth, although he was the youngest. No, it had more to do with what went on inside his head. In a world of ignorance, Jan was literate, and he was going to be a monk. Next year he would leave the comfortable familiarity of his home and enter the pious cloistered world of a monastery as a novice. One more year of freedom, yet it was a small price to pay for a life potentially full of privilege and opportunity. At least that was what his father told him. He rubbed his dark, curly, thick head of hair, which would soon be cropped into a monk's tonsure, and felt a measure of reluctance. He was a peasant, dark and youthfully attractive, and he enjoyed the glances and suggestions of the local girls. Could he really give all that up for a life of purity? The door flapped, allowing a gust of wind to stir the earth floor and fill the air with fine particles of soot and soil. He watched the particles catch the light and fall towards the dirt floor once more. Oh, Jesu, the milk! He lifted the top layer of the dirt, spotted milk skin with one scoop of his hand. Where's Pina? She'll be in trouble when Papa sees this, he mumbled as he shook the boiling milk from his hand. The door began to flap once more, and he caught sight of a form on the ground. What are they up to now, he thought, moving to the door. As he pushed through the opening, the glimpsed form expanded into a scene, familiar in that it contained known elements, the chickens, the yard, his horse, but combined in a new way that was at once unreal and terrifying. Where he had thought he caught a glimpse of his brother, there were instead two corpses face down in the dirt. Flies already hovered and buzzed, drawing to the congealing blood. His mind reeled. He could not reconcile the lifeless shapes in the dirt with the people he knew to be alive and well, those who would at any moment sit down and eat breakfast with him. They could not be the people that daily scolded him, called him brother and son. The door slammed shut in his face. He turned and walked to the table where he sat, his movements lifeless. His bowl was filled with morbid milk, and a handful of bread was broken into it. There was nothing, not thought, not emotion, nothing. Then slowly a feeling of expectation arose in him. The pot of milk was pulled closer and more milk poured into the other three bowls, splashing defiantly as he poured it into the last. Where's the cloth? He thought out loud. Pina will kick up such a fuss. His words trailed off. A huge knot formed in his stomach, and he felt the heat rise in his face. The expectation and anxiety mounted within him, sickening because it was real and not a dream. In one tremor the milk was wrenched from his gut and he heaved violently. It's no dream, he cried. No, no, Dio mio! The boy pushed back through the door, running to the place where his family had been taken. Wiping the vomit from his face, he dropped to his knees, bellowing out his anguish like some abandoned calf. So that's just a sneak peek of the very beginning of the book and the start of the first chapter. Look forward to sharing more of The Infidel with you. Remember, you can purchase it from Amazon. Just look for The Infidel by Elisabetta L. Faenza. Thank you.